You've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.
Space, the final frontier. But today we're exploring a different kind of frontier. The voices that bring your favorite characters to life. Welcome to the Captain's Log. I'm Bryan Kreutz, joined as always by my fearless co-host, Lili Fox-Lim.
Yeah, that's me. And today we have a very special guest beaming in, one of the most talented voice actors in the industry, Bess.
Absolutely. You've heard her in some of the biggest sci-fi franchises out there, including Star Trek, video games, animation, and beyond. Her voice has traveled through galaxies, commanded starships, and shaped entire worlds.
Ooh, from bringing powerful characters to life to crafting those unforgettable performances we know and love, Kay has done it all, and today we get to go behind the mic with her.
So set phasers to listen, because we're about to embark on an exciting deep dive into the art of voice acting in Star Trek and beyond.
Engage.
But first, we have some Star Trek news, I believe, don't we, Lili?
Star Trek news. As Spock's protege, Saavik once said, "Good day, Captain Spock. May your journey be free of incident." We have an almost no-win Kobayashi Maru scenario among us to have the Star Trek Starfleet Academy new series editor liken the show to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That in itself is a tall pop culture order to attain, but I've been watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and it has one distinguishing feature I wish the newer Trek shows would include in the upcoming Starfleet Academy series. They should emulate Deep Space Nine in how it spotlighted alien species. Even the human-like species guest stars had an incredible uniqueness about them, like Tai Kahata, played by Julie Caitlin Brown. She had a nobleness, but yet insisting persuasion that would be believable and memorable if a character like her were in Strange New Worlds. Or Saavik. Robin Curtis is a Hollywood veteran and can clearly play a Vulcan or Romulan in disguise, and that's a brand all her own.
I couldn't agree more. My gosh, that's Trek knowledge right there. Now,
and here.
Not just because you love Vulcanians or Romulan manipulators, though.
Or defectors, dare I say more. Back in a moment, but after we reveal a tiny tidbit of groundbreaking news, right, BK?
Oh, well, yeah, it's only minor. No! Actually, it's a major story break. Star Trek's Brent Spiner addresses a possible franchise return as Data after Picard. This is after Star Trek Picard Season 3 resurrected him. Now, our guest today coming up is Bess, and she's directly associated from the Star Trek Picard series, so maybe she has some insight into Brent Spiner's Data lore mixture. But the Star Trek franchise found a way to bring him back, at least partially, when Picard Season 1 showed him living as a consciousness uploaded to a computer. Now, Screen Rant reported that Spiner is joking around when he suggests that a full Data spinoff could be a possibility. Hey, you never know, right?
Yeah, we'd love that anyway.
We
if he's joking.
Thank you, Mr. Data. But it's very possible that such a thing has been considered, right? Maybe for a full series, I don't know. But back on the other side of this break and in the action in just a moment.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Hey, welcome back to Captain's Log. I'm Bryan Kreutz, and this is my co-host, the brilliant Lili Fox-Lim. And we're just getting started on this deep dive into the voice behind some unforgettable characters.
That's right. We've been talking all things voice acting, and who better to guide us through the art of bringing characters to life than our incredible guest today.
Yes, now if you've played Star Trek Bridge Crew, you've already heard her command the deck with absolute authority.
From navigating the final frontier to breathing life into some of our favorite characters, she's a true force in the industry.
All right, so let's welcome in Bess to A Captain's Log. Kay, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.
So Kay, you have a number of studies connected to Southern California, the epicenter of entertainment. Talk about where you hit the stride upon starting into training, acting in the performing arts.
That's a big question. Well, I went to USC in my early 20s, and I into the BFA program in acting, and I didn't graduate from there. I went for 2 years, and then it was there really that I came to LA to be an on-camera actor and win an Oscar by the time I was 30, and all those things. So I kind of stepped out of the program there, and it was then that I discovered voiceover, and it really was quite quick. I took a class, which is very rare in those days. This was back in the mid 1980s, and nobody taught voiceover, but this on-camera casting house decided to have a workshop. So I went to that. There was a casting director there. She thought I'd be good. She referred me to an actual voiceover teacher, and he said, after the 4-week class, he said, you should just make a demo. So he helped me make a demo, and then what do I do with this thing? And he said, well, you should submit it to a couple agents. And so I did. And William Morris picked me up. They were just formulating their scale talent roster. They represented movie stars for voiceover and things, but they didn't really have a scale department. So I was kind of fortunate to come along at that time. And I didn't spend very much time there, and then moved on to another kind of a boutique agency that handled just voiceover. And I was there for 12 years. It was Sandy Schnarr Talent. And then where things really got moving was after that initial decade, when I moved to SBV Talent. And that's where I really started to do a lot more commercial work and promo work and live announcing work and things like that. But it wasn't for another decade after that, in my 50s, where I entered the realm of video game and animation. That was kind of something in my youth, I'll say, that I was a little bit afraid of, and didn't really think I had, the stuff, to make it happen like so many of my colleagues. And I think I was just kind of bound up by fear. And by the time I hit my 50s, I was like, what's there to be afraid of? And I asked my agents. I was with Atlas Talent at the time, and still am. I had moved to that agency, and I had asked them if I could read for animation and video game copy, and they said, absolutely. And so, another iteration of my career was born. So I've had lots of strides, I've had some really good decades of doing lots of different things, but I'll say that doing video games and animation has really been the most interesting.
So then philosophy meets acting. Critical thinking, analytical skills, and an understanding of conceptual arguments and human nature itself seems to be points where philosophy, not just in Star Trek, but in life itself, as an exercise, would support an actor and benefit you. Talk about your studies at UCLA and how this benefits you as an actor.
That's such a good question, and I'm not sure how to answer it. And I'm not sure it's actually helped me. I wonder sometimes if it hasn't hindered me. I tend to live in my head. I tend to be a linear left brain kind of a person. So I'm really good at analyzing scripts. Really digging in to see what's there. And I have to work. I think I have to it's funny. I was going to say I have to work really hard to get to the emotionality of a character. I don't know that I have to work hard. I just have to jump is really the thing. I have to make the leap. And I think sometimes I get stuck in my brain and I go, oh, can I leap? Can I do it? Is it really in me to do? And then at a certain point, you just jump, and so I think I've actually had to overcome my analytical mind in order to be a good, accessible, open actor. And that is, that's a process. And I went back to school after UCLA even, which I went to UCLA in my 30s, in my mid 30s, early to mid 30s, and did not graduate from there either because I was in the height of my voiceover career, and I was in an undergraduate philosophy program, and there were many, many days where I'd be in class and I'd get a call to say, you're booked on blah, blah. Can you get there? And I would have to leave class, you know? And at a certain point, I was like, what am I going to do? Get a philosophy degree and do what with it, you know? Or am I going to work, you know? And I chose to work. So philosophy, you know, remains of interest to me insofar as I like to read and I like to think critically. I'm not a great philosopher, and I don't, you know, I don't have quotes from all the great minds at the ready, you know what I mean? But I loved it. And what's interesting is I really loved things like logic and oh wow, what was the one class I took at Santa Monica College that was just symbolic logic? Man, I loved that. It was like crossword puzzle, but with letters, you know, not what do I say? Of course, a crossword puzzle is with letters, with numbers, right? It was so fascinating to me. Like I just loved it. So who knew? But in my 40s, 50s, in my 50s, I went back to school again to study Meisner technique, acting technique. So I finished a 2-year program, Meisner technique, at the Ruskin School in Santa Monica, California. And that allowed me to enter the world of video games and animation. Like that, as soon as 3 months into that program, that 2-year program, is when I booked Anna in Rise of the Tomb Raider. So that was like really letting my analytical brain go and digging a little deeper. So yeah.
You voiced hundreds of television and radio commercials, narrated shows on HGTV, Discovery, and the Learning Channel, and you were the voice of the hit television series Property Brothers on HGTV from seasons 1 through 4, which I understand you count among one of your favorite gigs. Can you tell us more about this?
I loved that Property Brothers show because I just loved the production company, and I loved the producer that I worked with. His name is Danny Downing at Red Arrow, and they're actually out of Knoxville, Tennessee. But what I loved the most about that was that they were so collaborative, and they trusted me, and they just liked my instincts, and so recording for them was just a breeze. I would do what I would do, and they'd be like, "Great, you know, we got what we needed," and it was just fun, and they had great senses of humor, you know, the folks that were on the line, and it was just fun. And I love that show too. I love, you know, home flipping and, you know, renovation and stuff. And it was great. I think I voiced 4 seasons of the show, and I'll tell you a story if there's time. Okay. So after the 4th season, I was off the show, and the show went on for many more seasons. But one of the Property Brothers started to do the narration of the show, which made sense. They were becoming, you know, kind of famous and stars in their own right, and so it made sense, and it really became their show. It's a show that it's originally a Canadian show, and then they retooled the Canadian show for the United States, but it was still all, those early seasons were still all footage from the Canadian show, and they just revoiced it. All right. So then they started to do you know, as they continued, they moved into the United States. Anyway, so I was off the show, and I was like, great, you know, 4 seasons, right on. That was really fun. And then a friend of mine, Rob Paulson, he's a legendary voice actor. You know, he voiced Pinky and Pinky and the Brain, and you know, he's in Animaniacs, and just Carl Weezer, and like he's just has all these extraordinary characters. Anyway, he used to do a show at the Improv in Hollywood, and he would bring guests onto the show, other voice actors. And it turns out one day he texted me, we're great friends. He texted me and he said, "Guess who's coming to the show tonight?" I was like, "Who?" And he said, the Property Brothers. You know, and I was like, "You're kidding," you know? And I was planning on going that night. And so so we went, and I ended up being seated next to them. And so I could only tell them apart because one of them had dark hair and one of them had light hair. So I was like, Drew's the guy with the dark hair, and so I went in and I'm like, I sat next to the guy with dark hair and I'm like, hey, Drew. And he's like, yeah, Drew's my brother. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, they're twins, and I'm like, oh, what a loser, So anyway, we watched the show. And then Drew actually comes and sits next to me, right? So I was across. I don't know why I can't remember his brother's name, which is sad, but it's been a long time. Anyway, so after the show, I introduced myself to Drew, and I said, "Hey, I'm Kay Bess, and I narrated your show for the first 4 seasons of your show." And he was like, wow, it's so awesome to meet you. And I said, yeah, it's awesome to meet you too. And he goes, I narrate it now. And I go, yeah, I know. And he goes, oh, he like took this gasp of a breath, and he goes, oh my God, I took your job. And I go, yeah, but it's okay. Like, I had 4 good seasons, and that's a really great run, for a voice actor in a show. But oh my goodness, he was beside himself. Just like, I'm like, it's really okay. But it was just great to meet them finally. And I have a picture of the 3 of us somewhere. I gotta find it. But that was a fun night to finally meet them. But
Star Trek has had a healthy number of episodes to build a legacy to pull from. Talk about how you first became aware of the possibility of being a part of Star Trek. Had you auditioned before for Trek, or talk about this audition and landing the role of the La Sirena computer on Star Trek Picard?
First, I should say I am a huge Star Trek fan, and so I watched. I didn't watch any of the series first run. I saw a few episodes when I was a little kid. My brother, who's 10 years older than I am, he watched the original series, and so occasionally I would, peek my head in and go, "What's this?" And aren't the monkeys on? So so I didn't watch anything first run. But after I had my daughter in 2003, my husband said he had Star Trek on. He had Next Generation on. I'm like, what is this? I'll start, Next Generation. He goes, I think you'd like it. I don't know. I don't know how he knew. Perhaps he knew that part of my brain, interested in sci-fi and stuff. He said, I think you'd like it. And I'm like, okay. So I started watching it on BBC America. I think they still play it. But I ended up watching that show many episodes a day for 10 years. Once I got into it, I wanted to really get into it. Like, I'm telling you, I don't know how many times I've seen the entire series, but I have owned the series on DVD. I have, it's like I have Paramount Plus so that I can still watch everything. So that was my first love, was TNG. And then I don't know, after 10 years, I was like, maybe I should try another show. And so I started watching Voyager. And Voyager then very quickly became my favorite show. And it kind of still is, it is the show I go back to, when I want to watch something while I'm cooking dinner, or, I love that show so much. And so I came to this audition unbeknownst to me. I did not know it was for Star Trek. But when I did finally figure out that it was Star Trek, I was beside myself, just beside myself. I got this audition late at night, and I was tired, and I really thought about passing. Like, oh, forget it. It's another computer voice is what I thought, and I've read for a million computers. I just thought it was like a computer, uh, for some tech company, or like, I just didn't know what it was for. Or, I've read a lot of computers just for animated series. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to do, a Siri type voice. And I've done a commercial or two where I am a Siri kind of voice. So I got those a lot. It was under an NDA. It was There was nothing really on the script except some lines. And it was late at night, and I thought, I'm so tired. I'm gonna pass, you know. And then I thought, okay, you could do this in your sleep. Like just audition, just do it. And then I opened it up and I looked at the lines and I was like, oh, they're using old Star Trek lines, which they were. They had brought up, you know, TNG lines, you know, and they had a recording, a sample of Majel Barrett, and it was like, okay, so they want that style of voice. And I was like, yeah, I got that, you know. So I just did it really quickly and I went to bed. I sent it off and I went to bed. And the next day, maybe 2 days after, I got notice that they wanted me to read more. Like, we want to hear more. And so they sent a new script, and at the top of that script, it said Star Trek Picard. And that's where I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought, you almost passed on this, you crazy fool. Like, don't ever do that again, you know? Like, don't even let the thought, you know, enter your mind. So then I was a little anxious, right? Once I know what it is, it's like, but before I was like, whatever, I know how to do that. So I kind of had to, you know, talk myself off the ledge a little bit and just be like, just do what you do, you know? And so I did. And so I don't know, 3 or 4 days later, my agent called and said, so you booked that. And I was like, what is it exactly? You know, she's like, it's the voice of the ship in Star Trek Picard. And I was like, I mean, I did not allow myself to be excited, truly excited. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't tell anyone about it. You know, I didn't let myself really get excited about it until the first episode aired.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to A Captain's Log. Voice acting is a pace, tone, inflection, and voice director style that has a heavy impact on the voiced character performed by the voice actors. Bess will reveal her roles on Tomb Raider, Call of Duty, and many more experiences next week. For now, BK, I believe, has the next question.
I do.
For K. You're
Bess.
BK, but she's K.
That's right.
Okay.
Hey, we like the Ks.
Okay.
Okay. With the Star Trek Picard series being filmed in Santa Clarita, California, Kay, did you ever meet any cast or crew of the series in person? And also talk about how you record the computer voice and found your voice knowing that we had Major Barrett-Roddenberry and Julianne Grossman before you as computer voices to possibly maybe lean on a little bit different or kind of have a similar component. How did it all work?
Julianne is a colleague of mine. I've known her. We were represented at the same agency for a long time, and she's a very talented voice actor. And her ship, which I didn't really watch Discovery. Well, I think I started watching Discovery during COVID. And so it was after I recorded, at least after I recorded the first season. And her ship and her character, you know, of the ship was so different, right? It truly was a different ship, you know? And so I really was led by the producers to sort of follow in the footsteps of Majel Barrett. That was the prototype that they gave to me, you know? And that was, you know, just an honor. You know, I don't know how else to. She to me was like, she was the prototype for everything. I mean, she's the prototype for Siri. She's the prototype for all of it. I mean, she's in the collective conscience, you know, of our culture, you know? And so I just feel like she's the OG, period. You know, she just is. And so while I wasn't trying to imitate her per se, you know, I think they just wanted that. They wanted kind of a Starfleet feel, which is interesting because I still don't know I've heard both that La Sirena was a decommissioned Starfleet vessel, and that it was never a Starfleet vessel. And I'm not sure. I think the thing I heard was that it was decommissioned. So I don't know about that, but that would make sense to me if they had wanted something similar to Majel, right? So, but I'm unclear. I just felt like it. I just felt like it was a. I just feel really fortunate to be in the series. I just there's no other word for it. I just feel like it was a gift from the heavens. I don't know how else to. Any number of people that I know in voiceover could have done that job. That's the truth of it. There are many voice actresses who could have done the job. And why does any one of us at any one time, why are we the it girl? I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. We're all capable of it. So it certainly in that way just feel like a gift.
All right, we are in a very recognizable Federation Observation Lounge, also known as a conference room. But we've only just started our voyage through Kay's incredible career. That's right. Trust me, there's plenty more to explore.
That's right. We'll be back next week and hope you warp back and dock with view screens on to continue watching Kay Bess, as we'll talk about her experience voicing outside of Star Trek and the challenges of bringing video game characters to life. Plus, what it takes to create a voice that stands the test of time.
But before we go, let's put our own voice acting skills to the test. Lily, how about your best A Captain's Log entry? Can you do this? All right, you have the stage.
Captain's Log, supplemental. We are on the brink of a discovery. An exclusive 2-part interview with Kay Bess. All crew members are advised to remain seated and keep their ears open.
Fantastic William Shatner isms. What? That was awesome. Excellent delivery.
Thank you.
Stick around because A Captain's Log. We'll be right back for part 2 with Kay Bess next week.
Bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Ooh. Thank you.